Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Not Allowed to Work on That Side of the Bench? Okay. I'm currently working in a factory, and a couple weeks ago we moved into a new building. This new building was originally made specifically for my shift. However, the longer shift has claimed it as theirs as they work longer. Fair enough. The supervisor for the longer shift is a pain in the ass. She takes pictures of how the desks were left, and if anything has moved in the slightest, she complains. Any mistakes? She complains, even though they make more mistakes. In her recent rampage, directed at our shift supervisor, she kicked me from the desk I've been using as I make too much mess, and was told I have to work on the other side of the benches with everyone else. I have never left the desk in a mess. I always swept the entire side of the floor, as I'm the only one who worked that side. Always filled all the tubs of screws and things up, just always kept it how it was left. When I came in the next week, she had left loads of her stuff on my new desk. Paperwork, light fittings, pencils, she'd plugged chargers into the plugs, and it was at this point that I decided that none of their stuff would be allowed on my desk. It had to be left exactly as it was, and I've started taking pictures. The other side of the benches remains untouched by our shift and has started to accumulate huge piles of dirt, and the bins have become mountains. She asked why that side hasn't been cleaned, so I told her if I'm not allowed to work there, I won't be cleaning it, as it's not my mess. She's not happy, but knows there's nothing she can do. The next story is titled, Become the Worst Neighbor and HOA Board Member Ever? Lose your job in HOA. Let me start by saying never purchase a house in an HOA. It is a complete mess that should be regulated and illegal. If I knew about HOAs when I bought my first home, I would have never purchased my first home in one. Me and my wife purchased our first home when we were 24 and 25. We spent months looking at houses in areas and tried to find a forever home in a good district for potential future kids, etc. We finally found a perfect one at a decent price. At first, everything was great, super nice neighborhood and decent neighbors. Well, a few months after buying the house, we rented an RV to go on a trip and parked it in the driveway for the 3 days leading up to the trip to pack it and for me to learn how half the things in it worked. Well, this is when we learned that HOAs are absolutely crazy, and our neighbor was on the board of our local HOA. Within an hour of it being parked, he got home and stormed over demanding we remove it from his neighborhood, or he would have it towed and fine us for every hour it was there. Myself, being the average and normal person, told him kindly to duck off and get out of my driveway, and told him if he returns I'll call the cops because he was screaming like a madman an inch from my face. About 3 hours later, a big rig tow truck shows up, and he walked up like he was a god and handed me a plain envelope with a letter inside that pretty much said, by order of the HOA, this RV is to be towed, and a fine of $1,500 for violating their rules. While Mr. Crazy Board Member might not listen to reason, the tow truck guy they found wasn't so fond of entering my driveway and towing a vehicle when I told him if he comes on the property, I'll call the cops. Once the tow truck driver decided he's done being involved in this mess and left, neighbor goes even more crazy and storms off. I call my friend to get his dad's number because he's an attorney to ask him about this insane letter and fine I just received and to ask him some legal advice. After speaking to his father, he told me to come down, write him a $500 check, and bring along all the papers I received when purchasing the home and the current letter I just received. The next day, he had a very friendly letter sent to my neighbor and the HOA board, basically telling my neighbor to duck himself in legal terms and to leave us and our property alone. I then continued to receive fines of $1,500 a day in plain envelopes not postmarked stuffed into my mailbox that I then turned over to my friend's father, and each time he sent another set of letters and contacted USPS to report the incidents. Turns out putting mail into people's mailbox is a crime. Who knew? Well, we decided to go on our week-long trip across the state and mildly forget about it all. Kind of upset I had to spend $500 to have an attorney send letters, but that's what they do. Fast forward to us returning from the trip and the RV back in our driveway for 2 days so we can unload/clean, then return it. Again, each day, more envelopes stuffed into our mailbox and more visits to our attorney and more letters sent and more incidents reported to USPS. Well, here's where the fun really begins. Turns out Mr. Crazy finally gives me a summons to appear before the board. My attorney said this is crazy illegal because what they've done is use what looks like an actual legal document improperly to summon me to the board. Another $500 to the attorney, and we wait for the date they made, a Tuesday at 10 a.m. They attempt to keep my attorney out of the room on some board privacy rule, but quickly shut the hell up when he begins going over their own rules that they are violating to them. Deep in this HOA book, there are some very nicely worded rules and stuff outlining about what makes board members ineligible, and how they cannot serve if they commit certain infractions. Well, guess what Mr. Crazy Neighbor has done? Committed several of them, all documented. Also, the cherry on top is that if 51% of the HOA members vote to dissolve the HOA, it all goes away. Well, it happens my wife worked part-time from home during this mess and had all the free time in the world to begin a Disband the HOA campaign. Over the course of the next 2 months, she went around and really began to get to know our neighborhood really well. Turns out a lot of people dislike the HOA and the power-hungry seniors who act like dictators that run it. The HOA attempted to stall everything by holding no meetings, another HOA violation, and began their own campaign trying to change HOA rules to keep from being ousted, and a fairly racist flyer and letter to everyone explaining the dangers of not having an HOA and all the bad people, blacks and Mexicans, that will move in and take over/sell drugs, etc. That our houses would become much less valuable and everything else they could try. Turns out it's extremely fun to use someone's own rules against them. The neighborhood even started a fund that paid us back what it cost us to get the attorney started and the continued costs he had. A few weeks after their failed fear campaign and being forced to hold a meeting, a vote was called by using their own rules. The HOA was no more, and all remaining funds were to be dispersed back to the homeowners and members equally. This never happened. It turns out somehow the HOA used all their funds in the course of the last 2 months. About half the former board members sold their homes and moved, including Mr. Crazy Neighbor. I've spent 3 hours trying to find old news articles because it was reported on mostly due to the racist letters by the HOA. But it was too long ago to find anything. Moral of the whole mess, don't buy a home in an HOA, and if you do, plan to hire an attorney. The last story is titled, Vindictive Ex-Wife Illegally Signed Application to Local HOA in My Name. I'll start this off by saying my ex is vindictive as hell. We've been fully divorced since about right before the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated and we're in an at-fault state. It was messy since D-Day. All of the stereotypes. First the sobbing, and then trickle truths saying, I love you, it was just one time, okay, it was 2 years. And then the gaslighting followed by, I'm going to take you for everything, before packing her crap and walking out. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was in all the time we were together. We were married 5 years and together for 7. And in 2 of those 5 married years, she had affairs with 3 other men. The final one being a foreign businessman of some sort from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for STDs and was thankfully negative. Yes, she got pregnant by the final AP, and no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about all affairs before the baby was born thanks to a call from the first AP. My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me. But since we live in and were married in an at-fault state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house and the equity was divided 70-30. So I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home to put as a down payment on a different house closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade, but suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine. My ex did show up to my house once, but I refused to let her in. She idioted at me that I'd financially ruined her in the divorce. I said that if she was fully willing to do that to me first, and the idiot had the audacity to say it should have been my life ducked over and not hers. I laughed so hard and said it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers. I said if she was going to sue me, then to go ahead and sue me. It'd end up the same way in court because she has nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no angel, but I didn't do anything to her, and she was the one who ruined our marriage. She then said she'd tell everyone she could that I abused her. I said I'd sue her for defamation if she did, and I was recording our interaction and had those words saved to my phone. She went wide-eyed and her jaw dropped. The look people are calling the surprised Pikachu face. Then I asked why she was there, if not to just try and make trouble, because she had a new man in her life that knocked her up. She just huffed at me and said he isn't around much and she's stuck in a tiny apartment living off his child support till he comes back. It was immature of me, I know, but I did the bit of playing the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me to go duck myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than her any time. She raged at me and then got in her car to leave. Haven't seen her since. There is an HOA in my neighborhood, but I was not legally obligated to join it because the last owner of my house was not a member. I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well. The HOA had no grounds to force me to join and were not happy about it. The HOA president would show up with forms every week for the first month, demanding I sign them. Then she threatened to take me to court, to which I had to get a C&D sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop that. So, she started harassing me by looking for any infractions she possibly could to report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the HOA hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do. And I like to grill when the weather is good. And my neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. I had the police called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having my friends over. The HOA president I caught trespassing once when she was trying to peer into my windows. I called the police, but she denied ever doing it. So, I got cameras. She hasn't trespassed since. But I still got repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house. Some months ago, I started getting letters for fines in the mail. And when I contacted the HOA, the representative claimed they had it on record that I joined and needed to pay all fees effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. Then they emailed a scanned copy of the forms and they had a signature on them, but it was not mine. It was very similar in some ways, and I recognized it right away as being my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like, but it was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature. But the HOA still demanded to go to court, and it took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly and were threatening to put a lien on my house. We went to court and the HOA president looked very smug. But my lawyer pointed out how the signature wasn't the same as mine and was very inconsistent in the various forms. I'd never allowed the HOA president in my house, and I'd never requested the forms. The idiot HOA president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding, but when pressed where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife called the HOA and they sent her the forms, then got them back in the mail signed. But then she actually claimed she'd thought I'd signed them. The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was. The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, that had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her HOA. She went quiet, and I could see the oh crap look on her face as the hamster wheels were turning, and she seemed to finally mentally put the pieces together. My lawyer then counterclaimed that what the HOA did was blatant fraud and legal actions must be taken. And they were. I countersued the HOA for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd gotten since moving in, which I had lots of proof of. That won me about 10 grand after lawyer fees that I decided to put towards my mortgage. The HOA president was removed from her throne. I like to think that she was kicking and screaming. She was also slapped with a hefty fine. I've seen her outside a few times and she always looks at me like I am the devil. The HOA itself had to pay all of my legal fees too. I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature, but can't because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with her third AP. She's somewhere in Europe from what I can see of the final posts on her FB before she disappeared. So I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the US. So that was a wash. I'm not getting letters from the HOA anymore though, and the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this though. Other than the 10K payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.